In the future, an AI determines how likely it is you will become a criminal. But sometimes, this system isn't always perfect. We start things off by being introduced to Akane Tsunemori, who is rushing to a crime scene. Once there, she meets up with Nobuchika Genoza, who she is assigned to as she is a new member of the Public Safety Bureau, which are the guys that come after you if you commit a big no-no. They're going after a guy who was flagged down by a street scanner named Nobuo Okura, as his high level of crime coefficient score indicates him to be a threat to society. We're then introduced to the main powerhouses of the Public Safety Bureau, the Enforcers, individuals who have the potential to become criminals but are discovered first and put to better use. They act as hunting dogs to find other actual criminals. They are armed with weapons known as Dominators, guns which when pointed at a person give a reading indicating their PsychoPass levels. It then determines how much force is necessary to deal with their threat using the Sybil system, a sort of social credit system that Japan's government uses in order to determine someone's potential to commit crimes. Akane is then assigned to go with two enforcer agents, Tomomi Masuka and Shinya Kogami, to spread out and search for the suspect. However, the suspect is found while trying to sexually assault a girl by enforcer Shusi Kaguri. As Kaguri lines up the shot on the suspect, his crime coefficient level is around 190, so the Dominator is set to paralyze mode. However, after shooting, he realizes that the suspect is on stimulants, which renders the paralyze option useless. The suspect then begins to flee the scene, jumping out of the window and running away with the girl. His crime coefficient score then ramps up extensively due to these actions. So when Kogami then gets the drop on him shortly later, his Dominator now uses lethal force, making the rapist go. Because the suspect's victim was under such harsh conditions leading up to now, her score has also skyrocketed to now being deemed a danger to society, and makes the Dominator use lethal force against her as well. Kogami, upon seeing this, decides that he is going to have to deal with her. Akane begs him not to, seeing her as being able to be saved, but after being ignored by him completely, she is forced to shoot and paralyze Kogami to protect the girl. Sometime later, it turns out that even after that crazy first assignment, Akane's own crime coefficient score didn't change that much, which indicates that she must have a high level of fortitude. Upon making her way back to work, she meets with Shion Karanomori, who works as an analyst at the Bureau and is also a latent criminal similar to the Enforcers. A new threat is then suddenly detected, so Akane and Masuka are tasked to deal with it. Using their futuristic technology, they disguise themselves as robots and enter a shopping mall. Aw, cute. Where they quickly apprehend the threat. When Kogami wakes up, Akane goes to apologize to him, but he doesn't hold anything against her, going as far to say that he is grateful, as this reminded him that he wants to be an inspector, not a mindless killing machine. A short time later, the enforcers are sent out to investigate a death caused by a drone. They suspect that it was made to look like an accident, but in reality, it was a murder. Once there, they find out that the facility is completely disconnected from all networks in order to avoid hacking. This means that all employees here aren't a part of the Sybil system, and their Dominators won't work. Upon starting their investigation, their primary suspect becomes one of the employees who have been constantly bullied by the others. Kogami then interrogates the man, like, really aggressively, and this triggers him so much that he tries to kill Kogami by activating his drones. Turns out, this was all part of the plan to try and raise the man's score, as the other enforcers managed to set up a portable network inside the factory, bringing the Sybil system and the Dominators back online for this area, letting them quickly paralyze the man and also destroying the killer drones as well. Sometime later, the enforcers are investigating a new incident which has left a man missing. After checking his apartment, they discover signs that led to the possibility of this being a murder, as in the virtual reality system known as CommuField, the missing victim's avatar is still being used and piloted by someone. And it turns out that his avatar, Talisman, is super popular among the online communities of this VR space. The enforcers then go into VR to try and search for clues. Yeah, clues. That's the only reason, I'm sure.
Check this out.
Wow.
So that's pretty neat.
While there, Akane is brought into a chat room with Spooky Boogie. I wouldn't trust that. Akane fills Spooky Boogie in on a bit of what's been going on, so Boogie schedules an IRL get-together in which Talisman will have to attend, or his popularity will plummet. Once at the party, Akane tries to get close to Talisman so she can use the Dominator to determine his score, but it turns out someone he is working for, named Cho, tips him off about all of this, who then switches all of the attendees' holo cosplays into Talisman so that the original can escape into the crowd. The woman behind Spooky Boogie is then attacked and killed in real life because of her cooperation with the Bureau. Rip in peace, Spooky Boogie. The culprits all then plan on taking over Spooky Boogie's online identity just as they had done with Talisman. A short time later, later, after analyzing Spooky Boogie's speech patterns for a while, Kogami deduces that someone else has now taken over the character. They then follow this up by going to her place in real life, where they're almost blown up by a bomb that was placed there as a trap, and not the fun kind. After discussing it for a while, they decide that the murderer must be a big fan of Spooky Boogie, as to be able to imitate her so perfectly for so long. They then track users that went offline after the time in which victims had died, and find the identity of one Masataka Mido. They then go to his apartment and he gets caught out, which forces him to flee, but not before getting hit by a shot fired from Kogami. The other Enforcer agents then find him in a second place, while he is having a bit of a meltdown. They then quickly put him out of his misery. We then learn a little bit about Kogami's past, finding out that he used to be an inspector, which is a rank above Enforcer, but his crime coefficient score fell apart after dealing with a specific case, leading to his demotion to Enforcer. We then get some more details about Kogami and what led to his last case as an inspector. We find out that one of his friends and partners working the case, Sasayama, wound up becoming a victim, and in the end, this specimen case was never solved, leaving Kogami obsessed with it and avenging his friend. We then cut over to a school, where we meet Rikako, who is one of the more popular girls in school, recruiting another girl into her art club. We then get the interrogation of the drone murderer, who tells them he was sent the codes to turn the drones into killing machines by a new mastermind. Kogami then suspects this to be the same man that killed his partner 3 years ago. One morning, a schoolgirl's body is found, displayed as an art piece. Meanwhile, in the art club, Rikako is drawing some messed up pictures while a mysterious man is sitting behind her. Cutting back, we see that because of this recent artistic murder being so similar to the specimen case, Kogami is taken off the job, as it's too close for him. Back to the school, we find that the newest art club recruit has now gone missing, with all of her friends talking about it. One of who had heard that Rikako was seen with her, so she goes to ask Rikako if she knows anything. This then leads to her being turned into a completely messed up art display alongside her missing, now confirmed dead friend. Kogami, who just can't stay off the case, uses his profiling skills to determine that the killings in the girls' schools aren't the same as the unsolved specimen case, stating that these murders lack the originality that the other case had. He then explains that these murders might have something to do with Rikako, because of the connection between the way these bodies have been displayed and her dead father's artwork. When they go to investigate her, she manages to get away, as one of the teachers stops Kogami from executing her. They then find out from security feeds that she headed into the garbage disposal facility, and once they make their way inside, they find the next murderous art piece involving the two missing girls. While going over a lot of security footage, most of it either being damaged or tampered with, they do however manage to restore the sound to one audio file, with the name of Makishima on it, the man that was sitting behind Rikako earlier. As Rikako continues to flee, Makishima then calls her to say that he thinks she is a complete disappointment, betraying her and having a strange hunter with robot dogs dispose of her. We find out that this creepy hunter is revealed to be Toyohisa Senguji, a man who is entirely cyborg except for his brain. Elsewhere, Kogami and Akane go to visit with Kogami's former teacher, Joji Saiga, who aids in the investigation by giving Akane a crash course on criminal profiling. Afterwards, Ginoza reprimands the both of them harshly, because Joji has the ability to increase people's crime coefficient score by simply talking to them, which could ruin her career entirely, and is what happened to his father and to Kogami. Meanwhile, Makishima discusses humanity and philosophy with Senguji before giving him his next target, Kogami. To make this plan happen, Makishima and Senguji set up a hunt using Akane's friend, Yuki, as bait, to lure Kogami into an abandoned subway station. Their plan works perfectly, and as Akane asks Kogami for help, he goes into the abandoned subway station, finding Yuki in a train cart, which as soon as he stepped foot on, started to take off. They then end up arriving at Senguji's hunting ground, where he attempts to kill them while Makishima watches on from above. After a few near-death experiences evading Senguji and his robotic canines, Kogami manages to get in contact with Akane and the others, relaying his position to them. When the others get close to the hunting ground, they manage to send a drone in that finds Kogami and delivers him a Dominator, which allows him to now fight back against the Robodogs. Yuki is then able to lure Senguji into a trap, giving Kogami the opening to land the killing blow. Although the main threat is down, Kogami was injured throughout the fight, which allows Makishima, who has been overlooking the entire thing, to step in and take Yuki. Akane then arrives shortly after and goes on ahead to stop Makishima. She then finds both of them on a catwalk, where Makishima decides that he wants to test Akane. As Akane goes to line up a shot on him, her Dominator refuses to release the safety mechanism, as for some reason his crime coefficient score isn't nearly high enough to activate the system. Makishima then drops down a shotgun towards Akane, saying that if she wants to kill him, she has to do it herself, not with the help of the Sybil system. As she shoots the shotgun, she ends up whiffing the shots. I've been there, man. Disappointed that she didn't fulfill his wishes, she is forced to helplessly watch Makishima kill Yuki right before her eyes. Meanwhile, Ginoza meets up with the head of the Public Safety Bureau, Joshu Kase, about Makishima. Kase then confidentially reveals to him the real culprit of the specimen case 3 years ago, Toma Kozaburo. It turned out that he is criminally asymptomatic, much like Makishima. Being asymptomatic means that the Sybil system can't measure them accurately, making them practically invisible to the way they deal with crime. Kase then urges him to keep any information about this away from the public eye, as Makishima's existence contradicts the efficacy of the Sybil system. She then orders him to bring in Makishima alive. Meanwhile, following Yuki's funeral, Akane agrees to undergo a memory scoop, in order to provide a photo of Makishima based on her memories of the incident. Despite reliving the traumatizing memory, the memory scoop is successfully completed without her PsychoPass reaching into dangerous levels, providing a photo image of Makishima to aid in the investigation. Later, Ginoza discusses with Masaka, who is actually his father, about how Akane manages to keep her PsychoPass from becoming clouded. Elsewhere, a criminal with a special new helmet suddenly shows up, killing 2 people at a pharmacy while trying to obtain drugs. His criminal coefficient score, however, never went too high throughout this entire incident, meaning that no one was ever alerted to the crime. They assume that it must be something to do with the helmet he is wearing. Meanwhile, the very same man attacks a woman in public, brutally beating her to death with a hammer in the middle of a busy street, while also being in front of a PsychoPass scanner. This was only brought to the attention of the Bureau after it was posted online. After some investigation, they find out that the helmet mimics people's scores who are nearby to throw off the Sybil system. They track down the man responsible for the crimes, but he manages to slip past them because the helmet picks up on Akane's score, which doesn't let the Dominators work. She then stays behind so she won't hinder them, which lets them quickly apprehend the murderer. As footage of the helmet killings appear on the internet, the helmets are distributed to more criminals, who begin committing more heinous crimes out in the open. This begins to prompt bloodthirsty revenge from the public in the name of self-defense. The city then starts to descend into chaos as the Bureau struggles to maintain any sort of order. Kogami deduces that the riots are intended to act as a diversion, drawing the police away from the Health and Welfare Ministry's Nova Tower, where the Sybil's system core is located, which Makishima and his gang break into. Meanwhile, Kogami, Akane, and Kaguri head to the scene. As they reach the Nova Tower, Makishima intends to act as a diversion at the top of the tower, while Cho reaches the core of the Sybil system in the basement. Kogami and Akane decide to chase after Makishima to the top of the tower, as Kaguri descends into the basement. Kogami fights with some henchmen before finally meeting with Makishima. They then start busting it down with a pretty sick fight, where Makishima is able to get the upper hand. And just as he is standing over Kogami, ready to stab him, Akane comes in clutch, knocking out Makishima with her helmet. Kogami instructs Akane to kill Makishima, and she really considers it to avenge her friend, but manages to keep her emotions under control, placing him under arrest instead. Downstairs, Kaguri has lost connection with the network, and after defeating the guards, he confronts Cho at the heart of the Sybil system. Suddenly, the head of the Bureau, Kase, shows up and is revealed to be a cyborg, who then proceeds to override her Dominator to fire at and kill Kaguri and Cho. The next day, the city is reeling from the recent events, and Kaguri is labeled as missing. Later that day, Kase tells Ginoza that Makishima's case is going to be taken off their hands, without them interrogating or even being given the opportunity to prosecute him, which pretty collectively pisses everyone off. Later, Makishima is confronted by Kase, who reveals herself as Kozaburo, the murderer in the specimen case, and reveals that they are sharing a cybernetic body with Kase and the Sybil system. The true nature of the Sybil system is then explained, revealing that it's a supercomputer network comprised of human brains belonging to criminally asymptomatic individuals such as himself. Kozaburo then offers Makishima the opportunity to become part of that very system, to which Makishima graciously refuses, attacking the body and destroying it. He then goes on to escape from his transport. Afterwards, Ginoza is again tasked with trying to find Makishima, but being told not to let Kogami be a part of it this time, as he might try to kill him. Ginoza doesn't exactly agree with this call though, so he tries to find out some kind of loophole which will allow Kogami into the field without getting caught. However, he ain't all that slick, and Kase picks up on the plan, stopping it right out of the gate. She then tries to convince Ginoza to kill Kogami, but luckily for him, Akane steps in, knocking him out with the paralyzer mode before anything can happen. Upon awakening, Kogami borrows one of the helmets from Shion and retrieves keys to a safe house from Masaka before leaving the Bureau, explaining in a letter to Akane that the only way he can stop Makishima is to step outside the law. While laying low, Kogami stays with Joji and tries to find out where Makishima might be. The two of them do some investigation investigations and deduce that Makishima's next target is one of Japan's largest food suppliers in the form of an unmanned hyperotes facility. Elsewhere, Akane is contacted by the Sybil system itself, declaring that it's going to tell her the truth about everything. The Sybil system then leads Akane to its core, where she learns that it's made up entirely of human minds. Literally. It claims that she understands the necessity of this system, asking for her help to apprehend Makishima alive. Meanwhile, Makishima finds the professor who is responsible for the hyperotes food production line, murdering him after finding out everything he needed to know about getting into the facility. Kogami arrives on the scene not too long after and leaves a clue for the bureau in the man's windpipe. Elsewhere, Akane contacts the Sybil system and agrees to help, on the condition that should she accomplish its request, they will rescind the execution order that has been arranged for Kogami. Then at the crime scene, thanks to her detective work, they quickly find Kogami's clue, and learn that the target is the hyperotes granary. Kogami arrives at the facility first, with the others showing up shortly after. Akane then convinces the Sybil system to lock her Dominator to the non-lethal setting, with the safety unlocked, to use as a trump card against Makishima. The power then gets shut down to the facility, and Kogami sneaks in, while Akane and Yayoi head to the control room in case Makishima attempts to activate the emergency power. As they find the control room empty, Akane comes to the realization that Ginoza and Masaka are in danger. Elsewhere, Ginoza and Masaka trip a wire, setting off an explosion which leaves Ginoza pinned under debris. Makishima then comes face to face with Masaka, where they begin to fight. And although Masaka gains the upper hand in their fight, Makishima throws a bomb towards his son, forcing Masaka to decide between saving Ginoza or apprehending Makishima. And of course, he chooses his son's life. But as he picks up the bomb to throw it away, it explodes just out of his hand, which deals a fatal blow, causing him to die shortly after in his son's arms. As Ginoza remains horrified by his father's death, Kogami pursues Makishima. Upon catching up to him, they both begin to engage in a knife fight, where Kogami manages to stab Makishima and disarm him. Just as he is about to rush in and end the fight, Akane intervenes, throwing a paralysis grenade between the both of them, which allows Makishima to escape. She then convinces Kogami to go after him, but takes away his revolver, instead giving him her Dominator that's set to stun. Makishima attempts to escape in a truck, but Akane jumps on the back of it where she manages to shoot out the wheels, causing the truck to crash in a field. Still attempting to escape on foot, Makishima makes a run for it. After catching up, Kogami then sets aside the injured Akane before grabbing his revolver, chasing after the heavily bleeding Makishima. Not really going anywhere quick, Kogami catches up to him. Now completely resigned to his fate, Makishima kneels and waits for the shot that he knows is coming from Kogami, who finally puts an end to his reign of terror. Afterwards, the Sybil system tells Akane that they intend to reveal themselves in the future, at a time when the public will be more likely to accept it. Akane, however, responds by saying that one day in the future, someone is going to pull their plug. In the following 2 months, Ginoza is demoted from Inspector to Enforcer due to the recent events affecting him, and he visits his father's grave. Meanwhile, Kogami is now missing and on the run, to avoid the consequences of killing Makishima. Hey, thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed, please like and subscribe. It only takes a second and it really helps me out.